Hi guys, welcome back to another video, or your first video here, I don't know. Welcome if you're new here, welcome either way. And this this video is going to be my worst books of 2022 video. And I couldn't even think of I was about to say top 10, worst 10. And I'm really happy about that. With the number of books I read, I thought I'd easily have enough books to fill up a worst books of the year video, but I do think that I was just very happy to DNF the books that I didn't want to continue in. That being said, I do still have, let's count, 6, 7, 8, 9. Well, I do have 10, but some of them are from a series, so I'm just going to talk about them together. So let's get into them. I don't own a copy of any of these, so I'm just going to pop up pictures on the screen. So first of all, we have, or at number 9, we have Relatively Speaking. This is a play by a playwright that I really enjoy. I have performed in one of his plays in a amateur dramatics society and really enjoyed my time there, really enjoyed studying the text. And that was, what was it called? Oh, Round Around the Garden was the second play in the trilogy. It was released as I know that I'm supposed to be talking about Relatively Speaking, but we'll get there. It was released as a Table Manners, that's it. It was released as a play covering a weekend, but there are 3 plays, each of them following the same period of time, just in a different location in the house, and therefore you get a different part of the story. So I really like his work. This one was just a massive disappointment, unfortunately. There were characters and actions that were hugely outdated. Yes, there would be opportunity, I think, for people to take these characters in their own direction, but I just feel like there wasn't much on the page of them. And I think the guy was Philip. I just think he was a complete arse, so I really didn't like him at all. And yeah, it was just a bad play, and I think it makes it on this list because I had higher expectations because I knew the author already. Number 8 on this list, we have Can Everyone Please Calm Down by May Martin, I think. I don't know why I don't write down the authors when I make these lists, but oh well. So this one I read as part of a book group, and it wasn't an absolutely terrible book, and a lot of its problems I have with how it was marketed and advertised, which I understand is not always the decision of the author. So in terms of the book itself, I thought that it was quite repetitive. I thought the humour, so the author is a comedian, and I have heard several of the discussions that they have in this book as part of comedy routines that they do, and I just think the humour didn't really translate as well to written form. And also it has a lot of like graphics or ways that the page is displayed, where I think if you took all of those out, you'd really only have enough for a pamphlet, not really for a full book. I also thought that it was trying to give a lot of argument, but I think it was incredibly one-sided and didn't really give the reader a chance to make up their own mind, which is fine, but that does lead me to the problem I have, and that was with the marketing. So it markets itself as a, like it says on the front, a 21st century guide to sexuality. So in terms of what I was expecting and what I can imagine other readers expecting, especially if they're not well versed in LGBT literature, is that it gives a well-rounded argument for a lot of the discussions that are currently happening, and it just doesn't. And I wouldn't want this book to end up in the hand of someone who was new to these discussions, because I think that it could, not that it could sway someone, because I think it's very important to hear all these sides of the argument, but I wouldn't want someone going into it thinking this is how everyone in this community thinks. And because of how it's marketed, I think that could be the impression that someone gets, and I didn't like that. I mean, I did like some aspects of this book. It was mildly funny, not as funny as they are in real life, but it was mildly funny, and some of the experiences that this author has were incredibly relatable to me and my circumstances. For example, she was going on a date with a guy, and she was interested in him, and he thought that she was a lesbian, and there was that not miscommunication, but misunderstanding. I often get misconstrued as a lesbian, even though I do occasionally, very occasionally, like men and make out with men, and so people often get confused by that, so I found that really relatable in that way. But yeah, it just was not for me. Oh, I didn't decide whether or not to put which one of these to put next in the list. I think I'm gonna go with, okay, so this is technically number 7, but it takes up positions 7 all the way to 2, because that is the Belinda Blinked series, volumes 1 to 6. So these are all on my worst books of the year. They are categorically absolutely terrible. This is an erotic novel series written by this guy, and it is read by the My Dad Wrote a Porno podcast. They do 1 series per book, and they do 1 episode per chapter. And so the podcast I love, but in listening to the podcast, I also read, technically, the novels. And the novels are just categorically bad. They are about Belinda, and she gets hired into the pots and pans industry and works and or sleeps her way to the top. And the grammar is terrible. The characters are weird. The sentence structure doesn't make any sense. There's so much wrong with this, but it's a very, very good time. Hence why I don't think it's technically the worst book I read this year. You'll see what I mean. And number 1 on this list, we have Satan Was a Lesbian. So this is a pulp fiction novel. I know that that term gets bandied about quite a bit nowadays when people don't know the origins of it. So pulp fiction was when some authors wanted to write and produce books which were just like trashy novels, and novels where they didn't necessarily have the money for a editor, etc. So what publishers decided to do was use very cheap pulp wood paper in order to make these books that weren't going to be very durable but were very cheap to produce, and it gave authors the chance to release kind of what they wanted in the trashy area. And often that was the only way that gay stories could make the market, if they followed 2 rules. Either the character ended up alone and miserable by the end, or the character ended up dead by the end. I mean, obviously they couldn't have just no morality in these stories, so the gay character had to die or end up sad and alone. But this is why we have books like this, Satan Was a Lesbian. So this book, again, was categorically terrible, but it was a good time, and it was a really interesting deep dive into how representation got out in these times and how that has evolved. The reason why I've put this below Belinda Blinked is because I would still say this was slightly less of a good time. There are way more things that just do not hold up. Now I'm having a call. Wait 1 second. Okay, I can't remember what I was saying because I had a phone call in the middle of that. So, did I even tell you what this book was about? Anyway, it's about this couple who meet. One of them is like, oh my god, like, no, you're so scary, but I'm totally into it, but you're so scary. And one of them is, there was so much like devilry inference and metaphor. Like, this woman is like not the literal devil, but is corrupting this poor innocent girl, and it's about how they change each other and how they start to form a relationship, and crazy things happen, and then one of those previous 2 endings occurs. And it was just a wild ride. There are things that I actively don't enjoy in it, and I think that, yeah, this was literally the worst book that I read in the year of 2020. So 2020, I keep on saying that, 2022. I just looked at my thing and I was like, wow, I went through all these books in like a minute. But no, this is because I split the video into 2. Anyway, I am quickly losing light, so I will very, very quickly now go into my best books of the year video. So I will see you in that one. Bye.